Good deal. So now I can't jumble my words. Okay. We do have a new member. Tom Finch is taking the place of Marlis, and we want to welcome you aboard. You want to give us a little introduction of yourself?
Sure thing. I guess up front, thanks for the invite, Janet. Would not have been knowledgeable of this meeting because Marlis, she did retire, and she did it very expeditiously, under low covers. Didn't want a lot of fanfare, not a lot of retirement type of going away activities, anything like that. So I am her temporary replacement. I am the DVET for Montana, right next door. So once our agency is in a position to rehire and replace her, we will do that. And no timeline projected for that at this point in time. So I may be with you for 30 days. I may be with you for 6 months. I'm not sure. But in the meantime, I'll be doing Montana duties and North Dakota duties. And I've been with vets I'm working on my 7th year in this position in Montana. So very familiar with ESGR, your guys' mission, and work closely with the ESGR here in Montana, both USERRA related and community type events too. I'm located in Helena, Montana, so the logistics of getting to North Dakota for any type of events or anything like that, or training, it could possibly happen, but it would take some forewarning. And I'm not sure what Marlis's role was with training of ombudsman and stuff like that. But I'm here to try to make the DVET relationship and support with ESGR in North Dakota transparent, that Marlis left the best that I can. And once there's activity of the position being posted, I'll let Janet know. And of course, if someone is selected and hired, I'll get that information out too. I'm a Army retired military intelligence officer, did 24 years, worked for the state workforce agency for 3.5 years once I retired out of the Army, and then transitioned into this job. So transition out of the service was very good for me. I know it's not for everybody. I was able to get back to Montana, where I was born and raised, and went to college and all that stuff. So appreciate the time to introduce myself, and Janet has my contact information if anybody needs to reach out, and likewise. Thank you.
Well, welcome aboard. I didn't know Marlis retired either until
I hope I didn't let the cat out of the bag.
Yeah, no, Jeanette sent me your information, and I'm like, oh, she retired. Okay.
So Tom, I have a question. So if our ombudsmen have mediations that they can't resolve, then everything goes to you, so you're dual-hatted, you're doing both jobs then?
Yeah, I will do investigations also. So if it turns into a claim, I may not necessarily get the investigation or the claim. It'll be one of the investigators within the region. However, if my slate is clean, I have 2 that I'm working right now, one for Montana, one for Texas. But if a North Dakota one comes in and I have the capacity, then I will ask for it. I will take it. But if we have investigators in the region that don't have any cases and I have 2, then it will likely go to the other investigator.
Okay.
Does that answer your question? What you meant?
It does. Yep.
Okay. Yep.
Thank you so much, and thank you for coming on, in short notice. So we appreciate that.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you. Nice meeting y'all.
All right. We do have 2 speakers today. So we're going to let the speakers speak, and then we'll see if anybody has an update. And then I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview of what to expect in the January meeting, and some things that we're hopefully looking towards in 2024. We first have First Lieutenant Chelsea Adams. I don't know, Chelsea, are we related?
No, ma'am. My husband's from Tennessee, so that's where the Adams name is from.
Mine's from here. I think we met at the groundbreaking, didn't we?
Yeah.
We took our pictures. Yes, because I said, oh yeah, you must be my long lost cousin.
Yep. Yep, we got a picture with Tag and the Army commander. Yeah.
Yes, we sure did. All right. Do you want to introduce yourself just a little bit, and then you can, she's going to talk about soldier readiness process, and then Robbie's also going to be following up after her, but welcome aboard and thanks for doing this.
Thank you. Absolutely. So happy to be here. Good morning, everybody. I am, as mentioned, Lieutenant Chelsea Adams. I work in the G3 MOB office now. I previously was the Army Commander's Executive Officer. So I'm also an M-Day soldier. I am in the support platoon leader role in the 957 in Bismarck. Rather busy right now, but I also have 3 kids and a husband, so they're busy with sports and school and all of the fun Christmas activities that come along with all those kids. But yeah, wouldn't trade it for the world. So I'm going to try to keep my brief kind of short and sweet because I know you have a lot on your agenda today. So today I'm going to talk with you a little bit about who we are in the MOB office and the soldier readiness process as mentioned. The MOB readiness office consists of 3 different employees: the mobilization readiness officer, who is Major Pleshak at the moment, the force integration readiness officer, who is Chief Phillips, and then the mobilization plan specialist, who the role I'm sitting in, along with a lot of other duties and responsibilities. We also do the soldier readiness planning, coordination, and facilitation for any state SRP events. We have more of a support role, and this is to ensure that everything is coordinated appropriately and that the deploying unit has the resources that they need to succeed and complete any of their pre-mobilization requirements. This allows them to focus on other things rather than planning out these SRP and try and get state support to make sure all of their documents are prepared prior to deploying. Upon notification, we have a list of requirements that need to get completed based on where the unit is deploying to. Each location can be a little bit different. Sometimes they're going to CENTCOM, which requires a different training requirement than AFRICOM, or different command sections of the world. Let's see. We receive those in a series of orders or sometimes in pre-MOB meetings when we go down and we have meetings as a command team. We'll receive what exactly they need to accomplish. But one thing that is always a constant and it's prioritized are the SRPs for each soldier. There's 2 types of SRPs. One is a level 1, and that's at the battalion level, so more down to the soldier level. And then a level 2 is a state supported SRP, where they get down into the weeds of the forms and making sure everything is exactly how it needs to be before they go down to MOB station. Soldier readiness process event. The purpose is to ensure that each soldier meets their mobilization requirements. This could mean administratively and it could mean medically. If a soldier is not both of those qualified, we really should refrain from putting them on Title 10 orders, because we can send them down to our MOB station is Fort Bliss. We could send them down to Fort Bliss and then they'll just turn around and send them right back to our state because they're not qualified medically or administratively to deploy. So they can get stopped at that level, and we try to refrain from that because that causes a lot of angst and anxiety for the soldier. During an SRP, each soldier meets with a variety of different stations, ESGR being one of them. The G1 operations branch, where they look at several forms that I won't bore you with. They're just a lot of administrative stuff. Then they go through a medical, which is your periodic health assessment, where they look at vision, dental, hearing, behavioral health, make sure you're fit on the medical side. Then they go through the legal, where they can update or create wills. They will go talk to finance, where they look at their pay documents to make sure if they have a family, that their family separation form is accurate. So they get all of their entitlements, and that also includes their travel system. Next they can go to the chaplain if they choose to update any religious preferences. And then they also go see the family assistance program to find family resources. So a lot goes on into just a short amount of time. Normally we have 2 to 3 days with each unit, and to get through, let's say 957 is our biggest unit. So going through 190 some soldiers at one, in 2 to 3 days, it's a lot. So the way we try to get through all of them is to set it up as a round robin. One chalk will go to medical, complete all of their medical, and then they'll move on to the next chalk. And it kind of rotates like that. I'm sure you guys are all well aware of the round robin. So one interesting fact is a unit is required to deploy with 90% of the soldiers they send through the MOB station. Like I mentioned earlier, our MOB station is usually Fort Bliss, Texas. Sometimes we go through Cavazos, but not generally. Our level 2, which is the state SRP, that's really essential for the success of the unit once they get down to MOB station. I've heard, talking with Major Pleshak in the last month that I've been in the seat, he has so many horror stories of different units going down to MOB station and having to return their entire unit because they couldn't get 90% of their soldiers qualified to deploy. So our state is one of the very, very good states, which is really something we all should be proud of. And of course, we continue to assist them through the mobilization process and when they redeploy back home. But that's a whole other process that I'll try not to get into. I know that was really rather quick, but I just wanted to give you a few minutes if you have any questions of me on the SRP process. Yeah.
So being rather new, a lot of that was new information. My dad was in the military, so I know he did a lot of the different processes, but that was many years ago. So it's kind of good to hear. I mean, I knew that they had all these things, but I did not know about the round robin. So
yeah.
So Chelsea, I have a question. So when the ESGR and all the other stations have a station there, they actually don't brief at the SRP. They have their stations, correct?
Correct. Yep. We'll give them all an in brief, and then soldiers can go and visit with ESGR. The nice thing about the ESGR and the family programs table, kind of, if you want to call it a table, or station, is that if a soldier is done with medical and with G1, they can make their way over as long as they have that checkbox at the end of the SRP event. They're good to go and deployable. So we try to keep it moving. I'm sure most of you had to sit through long lines for 2 to 3 hours because you're waiting on G1 or waiting on dental to get through. I just did that a couple of weeks ago because we had a company level SRP. But yeah, it takes a lot of time to get through that many soldiers. So the round robin really is a vital piece to the SRP.
Is there a schedule?
Go ahead, Dave.
Is there a schedule for SRPs for the coming year?
No, because we don't have anybody really on the docket for deployment yet. We don't have any deploying in FY25 currently. Normally we start seeing that around the January, February timeframe to see if they're going to ping us for any units. And then once they ping us, that's when all of the other pieces start rolling and we start scheduling those SRPs.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the G3 office is very, they let me know and then I push that out to you guys. So our communication is very good. And I do have to say, Chelsea, the G3 is they've really honed that process in really well. Your chalk leaders and everything, they're on top of it. They come to our station and they say, who's been through here? And it's really running very smooth, and thank you very much.
Absolutely.
I think Delton had a question.
Yeah, I was wondering, Lieutenant, what are the ramifications? So you talk about the whole unit goes to Fort Bliss, wherever they go, and they're not ready to go and they get sent back. I mean, I imagine there are consequences for that, are there not? Or what essentially happens?
Yeah, ultimately they don't get to deploy. Being rather new, that's a very good question, and I'm gonna take that back to see if there are additional ramifications. But in the grand scheme of things, they'd have to light up another unit to go that would be relatively ready to go. They started doing a lot of SURF missions, which is like a contingency response force. So they started pinging different units to be on this SURF, and they have to be ready to deploy within 72 hours. So right now I want to say that that's why there are SURF units. I don't think it's very common that they're not 90% ready, or that the MOB station can't get them to that 90%, but I will definitely follow back up with a better answer for you on that one.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Absolutely.
I have a question.
Rich, I think you're muted.
Yeah, there we go. Now you can.
There you go.
If an individual soldier is not deployable, he's sent back from like one of the members of the unit.
Yep.
Okay, he's sent back. So, okay, if he's notified his employer that he's gone, then he comes back, then he actually gets any kind of benefits available under USERRA because he wasn't deployed. That would be my guess, right?
That's a very good question.
Well, it could take like a week or so.
It can take definitely a week or so.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden the soldier comes back and he goes to an employer, and employer says, "Oh, by the way, I thought you were deployed, so I filled your position," or something like that.
Yeah, I'll look into that one too. That would be a very good question to have.
So Rich, this is Robbie. From my experience, a soldier's going to be on orders. So when they're on orders, they're covered under USERRA because they're federally activated for active duty. When they come back and are non-deployable, they'll eventually come off those orders. So that order would still be in place and in writing for that soldier to use with their employer, showing that they came off and were on. So they had the benefits and now they're off. So their re-employment rights are now intact and initiated. Does that make sense?
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, sir.
Great questions. Anything else?
Is my mic live?
You're good.
Okay, thank you. My question is there a particular point that comes up more than others that's a tripping point for the unit going and not being at 90%?
Usually it's a medical issue. Sometimes it's could be a new medication that a soldier started recently, or it could be a behavioral health. Our units that are deploying down to the southwest border have to go through a vetting process too, which could ping a lot of different things. I'm not quite sure. They don't really tell you what it all pings, but anything that pings for the border patrol that might be a little off for that soldier, they can reject that soldier and they would be non-deployable to that location.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any other questions? Thank you so much for doing that. That was very good.
Yeah,
I appreciate that. Appreciate seeing you again.
Yeah. I'm sure we'll see each other around.
I'm sure we will. You have a very Merry Christmas.
Thank you, you too.
All right, take care.
You too. Bye.
And next is Robbie.
Morning, everybody. Jeanette, can you get my slides going? I do have a few slides I put together to show the different forms that we use at the ESGR table. All right. So as you can see, Lieutenant Adams briefed, the SRP is a huge process. Soldiers going through a couple-day event, going through multiple stations, doing a bunch of things. ESGR is one little piece of that pie. So I can't reiterate enough that just kind of be organized and ready to go to get the soldiers in and out of your station is very, very important. So next slide, Jeanette, please. So the ESGR process, this is the checklist that the ESGR put together for us. It's very good to overview this. It has the entire process that our table would do at the ESGR SRP. The SRP is the only event that we support where you'll actually get a face-to-face with every single service member. So this is a huge opportunity to explain what ESGR does, identify possible conflicts, collect employer data, pitch employer recognition, and give service members tools they can use to mitigate USERRA violations. Next slide, please. To kind of speed things up, I did a really, really big SRP this summer with quite a few people that are on the line right now. I developed a cheat sheet, a one-page cheat sheet to kind of help us get through that process a little bit faster. So this is primarily what I'm going to use when I brief what we do at the SRP process. Next slide, please. Okay, so very first and foremost, you'll be able to explain what ESGR does. And this gives the opportunity to ensure each and everyone understands what we do. You don't have to follow this narrative exactly, it's just something I pulled off the website. You can make it unique for every service member. It's your chance to just engage with them a little bit. And as you engage with them, you'll see if they understand what ESGR is. Maybe you can shorten that, your brief a little bit to them. If they don't understand what ESGR does, you can kind of go all in and let them know everything that we do. Next slide. Okay, so we need to be able to track at the SRPs who's been in and out of our unit. And this is done multiple ways. First and foremost, the rosters are the biggest way for you individually to see who has been through your station and who has not. Just a note is I kind of put a little snippet on the slide of all the different rosters I received just at the summer SRP I helped with. And you can see that they're all different. So just know that up front. Rosters come in all shapes and forms. You just need something to mark people off, highlight their name if they've been through, initial by their name if they've been through, and maybe a little place to write if there's follow-up needed on that soldier or service member. So one of our ombudsmen can maybe be notified, or Jeanette or somebody. So just something that you can use internally to see who's been through your area, your station.
Hey, Robbie, this is Jeanette.
Yes.
I'm working with Chelsea. ESGR we never had a column. We were kind of always lumped in with family programs. She's new in the position and she's working at making us our own column. So
Okay,
hopefully
perfect.
that'll smooth that process to make the rosters the same. So.
Yep. And just like Chelsea had talked about earlier too, she talked about chalks and round robins. Well, a chalk means that you have 100 people, they're broken up into 10 different groups, and each group's a chalk. So sometimes the rosters will be divided up by chalks. I found personally that it's much easier if you just have an alphabetical roster for the entire unit, because as Chelsea also talked about, people might be in a different area but see that ESGR is open, so they'll come over individually. And having the ability to find their name quick makes things quicker versus asking them, okay, what chalk are you in? And I'll try to find that chalk part. It's just, I found alphabetical is way easier for me, but that's just me. And of course, if you're running the SRP, do whatever makes you comfortable. Next slide, please. Okay, this is the most important, in my opinion, data collection that we are trying to get at the SRP. This is the employer data sheet, and I'll cover this a little bit more in depth. Excuse me, I have some notes here. So you must have the service member fill out the employer data sheet to the best of their ability. And just some background, in 2010, the military developed the Civilian Employment Information, or the CEI program. And through most of the 2010s, service members had to update their employer information annually, which then gave ESGR access to employer information. Currently, the CEI is still being used, but I talked to quite a few units and it's not mandatory. So there's a lot of units that don't use this anymore. Some do, some don't. So ultimately, this data sheet is ESGR's only way of collecting employer information now within the Army Guard in North Dakota. So it does serve a purpose for us to get those employer addresses. Otherwise, we wouldn't know who service member employers are. So looking at the breakdown of each area of the employer data sheet, service member information is pretty self-explanatory until you get down to military status. And this is where we had a lot of questions. So RSP, that's Recruit Sustainment Program. These are service members, typically Army Guard, who before they leave for initial training or basic training, they're assigned to an RSP, or Recruit Sustainment Program. So almost 100% chance you will never check this block if a soldier's deploying, because they need to be through that initial training to deploy. Student flight, those are the same thing on the Air Force side. So there's service members in the Air Force who have never been through initial training. So also almost 100% chance that you will never check that for a soldier that's coming through a SRP. M-Day is a part-time service member. So these are the soldiers that we really need to engage with, because they are the soldiers that are part-time military, but have more than likely maybe have a civilian job. So they're the ones that ESGR works with USERRA. AGR, that's Active Guard Reserve. So these are our full-time Active Guard Reserve soldiers in North Dakota that work full-time for the military. So their employer is the military, so thus we don't really engage with them as far as ESGR. However, I was a former full-time soldier. Knowing what ESGR does is very important for a full-time soldier, because we can then help our soldiers with that information. So it's still important to engage with AGRs, but they really don't have a big part with ESGR. Technicians are service members who are a federal civilian employee to the military. So they hold a dual status as a civilian employee and a military service member. I don't think there's any ombudsmans on, and I kind of tried to research this myself. There are a lot of cases out there with technicians having filed with ESGR, complaints with ESGR. However, their employer is the military also, just in a civilian status. So I'm not really sure how that would work, if they would be able to or not. As a leader, past leader in the North Dakota Army National Guard, I have brought that up to supervisors of technicians, because I have personally had more problems with them being discriminated against going on active duty. But I've never had any resolution on that. We've just kind of handled that in-house. ADOS, that stands for Additional Duty Operations Support. So these are service members who are on active duty orders for the military, but not full-time. So they might be a timelined order for a month. They could be up to 365 days, but not a 20-year order like an AGR might have. So any questions on the military status? Like I said, that's a big question we get all the time when the service members are filling this out.
I really appreciate your clarification and spelling this out. A lot of the check boxes, I'm assuming, are going to be the M-Day. Is that correct?
Correct. Okay. Yep. 90% M-Day, I would say, just off the top of my head, and the other, 10% between AGR, technician, and ADOS. That's what we saw this summer. Going on then, civilian status, also pretty self-explanatory: employed, unemployed, self-employed, or student. Obviously, you can kind of look at that, what they check to, how to engage that service member. if they're unemployed or a student, it might be you're talking more future, like when you do get a job, this is what ESGR does, that type of stuff. Employer information, also self-explanatory. The biggest thing that was missed on ours is that little fine print right behind employer information, which says, have the service member initial behind, may we contact your employer to invite them to an ESGR employment event. So they're basically giving us the rights to contact their employer to invite them to a boss lift or a lunch with the boss or any other event that we are proposing in the future. So you always have to kind of make sure they initial that or do something with that. And some service members may not want their employer at these events, so they want initial, and that's fine too.
Hey, Robbie, this is Jeanette.
Yes.
So I created this form from a different state had the form, and so I just revised it a little bit, and we can make that bigger. I can change this form if you think that we need to make that bigger.
It was not being caught. I was like, they were just passing by it, I think, because it looked like notes, maybe. I don't know. But
Okay.
yeah, it wasn't too difficult for us to point that out, and we kind of got in the habit of doing that after doing it 400 times. But
Yeah, okay.
no, it's all good. And going down to employer recognition, this is your opportunity to talk about Patriot Awards and other employee recognitions that we have. You notice on the form, and we do collect these employer data sheets, which I'll talk a little bit more about. This form does have a QR code on it. Don't worry about that. There's a separate handout, which I'll show later on the slide, that has all these QR codes. So we had a lot of service members who were trying to scan that right away, thinking that's the only time they're going to see this code. No, they're going to get this code to have with them forever in a handout that we give them later. It's just there to kind of show them, and more of a talking point for you at your station to talk about how we've integrated and have these QR codes available. And then finally, employer conflict. Have the service member go through and check if they have a conflict or not. And if they do, they kind of check all that apply to their conflict. And this is your opportunity to kind of narrow down and help them specifically if they do have a conflict. And some do, most don't, but some do. So it's kind of your way, to more engage them with ESGR briefing. And once again, the QR code's there, but like I said, there's another handout that has that QR code on it already. And then the biggest thing at the end, once this is all filled out, we do collect all these forms and get them back to Jeanette to enter into her databases. So just make sure you collect all these forms at the end for each soldier or service member. Next slide, please. Okay, like I talked about the packet. So there's a packet that's put together, and as you can see, right in the center of the screen is just a little half sheet of the 2 QR codes for employer recognition and employer conflict. So the service member always has a way to, have contact to that website that'll let them put in that Patriot Award or Employer Award and or request help with a conflict. I know no ombudsmans are on right now, I don't think. And if they are, please chime in. But talking to Mr. Frederick, the QR code for this goes to the national website, which starts a timeline for him to get things done. If a service member would contact him directly, which we do have an ombudsman business card in the packet for them, they can handle it without those timelines a little bit easier. So he prefers, when I talk to him, for them to contact him directly if there is a problem versus going to the national website to input a conflict. But bottom line, we're out there to help these service members. So this gives them the information to get help if they need help. So any questions on the packet that we put together for each individual? Okay, next slide then. Employer letter. This is something that is very valuable to the service member. And Chelsea kind of alluded to this during her briefing, but not everything is finalized when we do the soldier readiness processing events. And a lot of that is really when the soldiers leaving is not really finalized during the soldier readiness processing events. So they don't have orders. And you need a federal order to give to your employer to let them know that you are leaving. That's your verbal and oral intent to mobilize. So we developed this employer letter so the service members have something to give to their employer in the event that they don't get those orders timely. So like I said, this is a very valuable piece. In fact, when I was full-time, we actually plagiarized this and we would use it for annual trainings for soldiers that needed it for their employers. So not just mobilization events like we use it for, but I've seen other units use it for smaller events. So very valuable. Next slide, please. And finally, when you're done with a soldier, make sure you, like I said, initial off on that roster so you know that they've been through your station. Write down any notes of importance there that you may want to take back to an ombudsman or forward to Jeanette or something like that. Because like Chelsea alluded to, the 957 Mobile Bridge Company in North Dakota is almost 200 soldiers. So that's a big unit to go through, and to try to remember which ones had problems at the end if you didn't write it down would be next to impossible. So it's just good to make little notes for everybody if you need to follow up with somebody.
Hey, Robbie, this is Jeanette. Can I go back and talk about the employer letter just quickly?
Absolutely, absolutely.
So this employer letter, what happens is when a unit is notified that they're going to deploy, I work with the unit and they put their information in that first paragraph to let me know how many days they're going to be gone and their date that they're going to leave. And then also on one of the paragraphs, it shows like when a unit leaves, they've got a rear detachment or somebody that is back in the unit that can answer questions and things like that. So I do work with the unit on this. And then once everything is verified, this letter also goes to the unit and they email it out to the soldier as well. But sometimes the soldier maybe doesn't pay attention to it or it gets lost in their email or whatever. So that's why it's very important that this goes to the soldier during the SRP.
Yep, and sometimes they were available at the SRP, sometimes they weren't. Ultimately, we have two chances to get this letter out to the soldiers. We also do yellow ribbon events, which I know is going to be a briefing in the future, possibly. That's another opportunity to get this letter out to the soldiers before they deploy. Okay, after you initial the roster, there's one more thing we have to do. And I don't know, if, Jeanette, if you want to show this now online or wait till at the end.
Oh,
but,
yeah.
Okay, Jeanette's going to bring it up and I'll kind of talk about it. It's a Department of the Army Form 7425. Chelsea talked about all the different stations that the service members have to go through. This form has all those tasks that they have to complete prior to mobilization. And I just want to try to show you where we have to initial
I'll
off
get
on
it
that.
here, yeah.
So
Yeah.
I believe North Dakota modified this form. That's why you'll see when it pops up, there's a lot of black on it. Well, they blacked out a lot of the not used or little used areas of the form.
Can everybody see that?
I can, yes. Awesome.
Okay, so we are way down here.
Yeah, so on page 2 under training, because ESGR is a mandatory mobilization training event, you should see item 16 under training. It should say reemployment rights briefing with 3 blocks behind it. It's kind of right in the middle of the screen. The first block is soldier status. So that's either a go or no go. So if they got the briefing from you and they're good to go, you feel that they have enough information to mobilize with, I just put go in there. The second block is for your initials as the briefer. And then the third block would be the date of the SRP or the date you briefed them individually. So this sheet, every soldier will have, and when they go back to Chelsea at the end of the SRP process, she will validate that they've hit everything, every single block on the sheet needs to be signed off by somebody. And if they're not, like if you would forget to do this, it's not a huge deal. That soldier or service member will just be coming back to you to get an initial. So that's why it's important to have your roster also, because you may not be able to remember each individual face, and then you go back to that roster like, yep, I saw you. I'm sorry, I didn't initial your sheet. Here you go. You're done. Stuff like that. So hopefully that all makes sense. It's a lot of paperwork, but there is a really big method to the madness of the SRP process. All right. Bring my slides back up. And I believe we're on slide 10. This one, yep. So this is just some comments that I put together for the end to make everything smoother. So some efficiency tips, just be organized as possible. I always like to come early so you can set up, ask questions, get prepared. You might need to find tables, chairs, other things. Just give yourself some time. Sometimes the event's not 100% set up perfectly for you when you get there. It's also a good time to find out who the SRP leadership is. It might be Chelsea, it might be somebody else in her office. So it's got to find out who that person in charge is, because they are a great subject matter expert for the SRP. So if you have any questions during that time you're there, they can help identify any roster changes, any schedule changes, whether you're going to get a lunch or not that day, because sometimes they work through, excuse me, sorry, work through lunches, any breaks that are available, stuff like that's nice to know also. And the SRP leadership would be able to tell you about that. Also, identifying unit leadership and SRP leadership kind of help you identify that. And unit leadership is very important to identify because they know the soldiers. So if you're missing somebody, they know exactly who they are and where to find them. So they're great assets to be able to identify right away so you know who they are. Also, obviously the leadership is very important for you to engage with ESGR information, because they're the ones that will be helping the soldiers during the mobilization and deployment. So it's great to have even more handouts for the unit leadership, like the USARA booklet or other handouts available to hand out to the unit leadership, because that helps them out a lot also, as well as business cards and anything else so they can contact ESGR when they are deployed if they have problems. Next slide. So are there any questions on the process? It's not as hard as I made it sound like, probably.
How many go to this? And then, oh, sorry, Tom. I mean, how many ESGR support this event at a table?
It depends. So that's why it's very important to be organized. This summer we had, at the most, we had 4 in one day, which was awesome. And we had plenty of people. And at the least we had 2, which was a little more hands-on for everybody that was there. When we had 4, this is something else I'd like to bring up. And I know Paul and Dave were there that day. When we had 4 people, we were able to push one person out, which was myself, and I handled basically the employer data sheet. So we were able to speed up the process immensely by doing that, to where I sat down with soldiers as they came in, they started filling out the data sheet, I handled all those questions, and they would go to the ESGR table to actually get the ESGR briefing, which would, at that time, was more specific to that individual service member, because they had everything filled out. And this sped things up quite a bit.
The reason I asked that question is that as we're planning in 2024, and I don't know if there's any, doesn't sound like there's a lot of deployments coming up, but that would be another thing to plan as far as interaction with soldiers, as far as an event to support. So.
Yep. Yep,
Um,
I've done the briefings, I've done yellow ribbons. This is a single most event where you actually have individual contact with every single service member. So you don't get that at a unit briefing, you don't get that at a yellow ribbon. So this, if we want to contact individual service members, this is the only way.
Sounds very exciting. Tom,
Yeah, I was just going to make a comment on the employer letter, and that is a great thing. I've seen several cases where the service member feels their employer are making disparaging remarks, disparaging actions because they're asking for orders. They've been notified that they're getting ready to leave. It's going to be a lengthy departure, a time that they're away, and the employer may be prior service and knows you get orders when you go on those things. But a letter like that can bypass the employer having to tell the service member, well, I want to know who your chain of command is to so I can ask them where your orders are. So I think that that letter can divert a lot of that. And I've seen several cases where I don't think it would have been a claim if the employer and the service member had better communications. And I think that letter would really help appease the employer to know that they have someone they can call in the unit and get straight information and not give the perception to the service member that they don't trust them or don't believe what they're saying. So yeah, that's a great tool.
Tom, could you maybe expand on when Robbie was talking about on the employer data sheet, the technician status? Because you know, when your technician status, sometimes there is discrimination. Can you answer some of that?
Yeah, the technicians, of course, they're protected by USERA too. There are some special rules that they fall under because of who their employer is. And I personally haven't had one of those cases yet. When they do come in, we do assign them to our more senior investigators, more seasoned investigators, or someone who's had them before, because there are some special rules that apply. But I don't know if I recall the exact question or not, but they do have USERA protections. But given who their employer is, it's handled a little differently, but the law still generally applies. Typical federal answer there, but
Jeanette and Sherry, I'm just going to commend Robbie. He did, it was fun working with him. First of all, he was really organized this summer when the day that I was there helping. I know Paul was there and Dale Lane was, Pop had some time as well, but it was a wonderful experience, but it really helped Rob. All the packets were there. So Jeanette, I know you got everything to Rob and, but there were just a ton of good conversations, that we had that day. I don't know if we saw a bump up in any Patriot Awards from that or not. It didn't. It seemed like we've kind of had a lull this year a little bit in some of those. But anyway, bottom line is, Rob, you just did a great job. You really know this stuff, and having Rob there was a real good crutch to have because after I was, went through a couple of them, I had some questions for Rob, and he was right there and able to answer them. And then from there on, I was very comfortable in trying to go through that. That information. But anyway, yeah, if you ever have an opportunity to work one of those, and many of you that have been in the National Guard, I guess you've lived through them on the other side of the table. But for someone like me, to be able to connect with the service members, that was really very valuable, very priceless, very memorable moment. So Rob, great job. Thanks for your leadership on this area, but just outstanding.
Rob, Dave Johnson, you did a great job. And are they usually you were there 4 days, right?
That's you're on mute, Rob.
6 days.
Yeah.
I thought it was going to go on for a month, but anyway, thank you very much. What was well organized, that's for sure. And I appreciate all that you did. Patriot Woods.
I don't think they're usually that long, right? Robbie, do you want to explain why that one was so long?
Oh, okay, so that one was that SURF units that Chelsea talked about. So those were units that technically are not currently on deployment orders or even looking at a mobilization, but they're preparing to. They're to be ready in 72 hours. So we did a lot of those surf units this summer. Yeah, that's why there were so many. There was one Southwest Border Mission unit that's already at the Southwest border in California right now, and then another unit that was getting ready to go to Kuwait. So we did all in 1 week. Basically, they just lumped them all together.
Yeah,
Where
they're
are
most,
these? I was just
Oh,
gonna say,
they're-
where are these done?
Everywhere. Typically, they like with the medical. There's only a few places that the North Dakota Army National Guard can host an event like this. So
Yeah.
the Fargo Armories and or the Bismarck Armories or Camp Grafton are the three major locations that they're handled because of the medical requirements. So that's usually where they are.
Yeah.
I tell you what, I know the leadership was very, very appreciative of that effort, Rob, and for ESGR's participation in that, because well, Lieutenant Colonel Kletke saw him that day, and then Scott Obergewich was even there. So I don't know if it was more 141 MEB heavy that day. It maybe seemed like it was, but anyway, yeah, just I know I had lunch with Scott afterwards, and he was just so appreciative what ESGR was doing there that day, and and he had to go through it himself. So I'm sitting there talking to Scott. He's had to been through a dozen of those things, if not a lot more than that. But yeah, it was a good deal.
I just want to mention too that when you have these SRP tables, it's nice to have a sample of a Patriot Award. So when it comes time to talk about the Patriot Award, they actually see it and they're like, wow, that's really nice. And then we also have a sample of a statement of support. So the ESGR volunteers, you never know if that service member is going to put their employer in for a Patriot Award, right? Right. So you can always say, hey, would you like us to contact your business and present them with a statement of support? And then so they see that and they know what it is. And then you'll have to annotate that on there. So then all those sheets come back to me and then I can push out those statement of supports and then push them back out or print them and then push them back out to you guys to present.
Hey Rob, the only critique I have is that next time you sit me next to Bonicelli, you got to make sure he doesn't try to swipe my paperwork all the time when I'm working with somebody.
Yep.
I have a question. I just on a comment because I know Sherry's going to cut us off here at 9 o'clock. I'm glad to see Jeanette back and her computer working. When these guys got deployed to the border, I mean, I've had about 10 statement of supports right now. I got about 4 left to do. Trying to contact those people is not easy. And right now I think I sent 10 requests in for SOSs from our business after hours. So a lot going on. So thank you, Jeanette and Sherry. I take your call.
Thank you, Robbie, for doing that presentation. That was very, very well done. And I learned a lot, as I do every time I hear something with ESGR. I know we're pushing 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock your time. Are there any updates from any of the group? And if you don't mind holding on just a couple minutes, I'll give you kind of a preview of January. Has anybody got anything to update the group on?
Hey Sherry, the only thing I have is I was just into the fan site this morning. So Paul and Dave and Rich, if hopefully you guys have access. I don't think Kevin and Jody are not on this morning, but I went through there. There's still only 3. Sam's Club. I didn't look which Sam's Club it was, Fargo or Bismarck, or where else we have Sam's Clubs, but Barkus Law Firm, that's in there, and then the city of West Fargo. So those are the only 3 that we have in there. So 2 of those out of the Fargo region. And just because there's only 3 so far, I don't think I'm going to have a meeting of the awards committee this month. But we'll try to, Jeanette, I'll work with you to, and Sherry, if you want to sit in on those, I don't know if you have time or not, but we'll make you aware. But we'll need to get together shortly after the first of the year to have a couple meetings just to get those assigned up for a quick follow-up. And I think we've got till the end of January, first part of February to get that stuff in there. they're not, you know, there's some potential there if we want to work with, especially the city of West Fargo. You know, but you know, Sam's Club is a big beast. I haven't really reviewed that one so far, but just be aware, we'll probably give everybody a break for the holiday here, but then we'll hit it right after the first of the year. So, but only 3, so that's a little disappointing. We've usually had 15 to 20 nominations every year, so it's probably going to be a pretty quick process. But anyway, I'll make a pitch the next time I see General Dorman again to see if they can inspire, get the word out once more to have those done. But we've done that, you know, 3-4 times now. So anyway, sorry. Thank you, Sherry.
I just want to add to that too. ESGR headquarters, they have every service member's email. ESGR headquarters has sent out 3 or 4 emails to every service member. So just so you know, I don't know, because I wasn't aware of that the first year I was here. So just to share that information that emails do go out to service members.
And Jennifer McGuigan just sent an email just this morning that happened again. So she just said that they sent it out again. I think, Delton, that there's just, I don't know if it's because of transition or what's happening, but there's a decrease in a lot of the awards at different levels. It's just because there's so many changes, I think. So hopefully that changed. And yeah, I would invite you to those awards things. If I'm available, I'll pop on just so I can learn more about the process. Because I definitely have a gap there, that's for sure. Anybody else have anything? I know we don't really have many of the regional chairs on, but so Rich, I think you're one of them. But anyway, and Dave, you're one there too. Robbie, oh, I guess we have more than I think. One thing that we would really like to emphasize is to invite, we'll be sending information out about the upcoming 2024 meetings. And with that, we would really like to emphasize sending that out to your regional people and to encouraging them to come to the meetings. And if they have enough warning or time to put it on their calendar, maybe they'll be able to do that. The reason we really want to emphasize that is that there will be changes in 2024, primarily with the VST position changing and decreasing hours and some of the challenges, which we'll go into a lot more in January, that Jeanette is facing, as well as all the VSTs. I think we're going to have some challenges of even trying to get some of the events approved. It's just going to be interesting. So it would be really, really helpful if the regional chairs can encourage their people as well. We might be asking regional chairs to help in a little bit different way, not to put more work on you, but maybe to take a different approach because of Jeanette's hours being decreased. And so it's an opportunity. Every time there's change, we can look at it as, oh no, there's change, or we can look at it as an opportunity. And we want to carry on the good work that has been started all these years, but there will be some challenges at the national level with some of the direction that they are doing and some of the challenges. I've been reaching out to some of the other state chairs that also are getting cut their VST hours. I'm slowly hearing from some. Jeanette, I got one more, so I've heard from 2. So I'll forward that information. What I'm hearing is none of these people that have been in this for a long, long time are surprised. They either think that it's going to be 1, temporary, or 2, it's a way that they're going to phase out ESGR program. So I don't like that one at all, but just want to be transparent. And as we go into 2024, the leadership team is going to meet monthly as well. And we will hopefully be very transparent with you guys and reach out so that we can try to keep this program going to the best of our ability. Also being in contact with General Dorman and Colonel Larson as far as trying to support Jeanette in additional hours. So More to follow, but the January meeting is going to be really important. We won't necessarily have quote unquote a speaker, but we want to bring you guys together to kind of brainstorm. What do we want to do? Rob Keller will still send out the survey, but really we want to get your input and your direction. So if you can encourage your people to come, our people, the regional people to come as well. I'll also send out an invite to them, but I think that would be really helpful. Appreciate each and every one of you. I hope that you have yes, Jeanette.
I just wanted to add, some of you that have been around in ESGR for a while, if you remember, there used to be one or two full-time technician positions for the ESGR VST, like, Pam Miller, Margaret Burney, Vern Fetch. And so we are talking about that now, because if the contract, like if option number 2 happens where they're trying to phase out ESGR, our state is looking at a long-term solution to have a full-time technician person like we used to have many years ago. So I just wanted to throw that out there too, that there are so many different options flying around out there.
I'd say, Sherry, I think I'm off mute here, but so if you're hearing that, I've had conversations this week with Chair Bogle and Captain Townsend, our executive director. That is not going to happen. ESGR is not going to get phased out. There are changes that are taking place right now, but if you're hearing those rumors or people are thinking that, because I've heard that as well, we need to nip that, because that is not the case. The service chiefs are not going to stand for not having ESGR not available. Dan, General Wilkinson, who is on the Joint Chiefs, he's the head of the National Guard. He is a significant fan of ESGR, as are all the tags. And I don't believe any of them are going to stand for not having ESGR in place. So yeah, there's a lot of things on the surface that you think, and you know how rumors happen and rumors start flying and people start talking, but that's a real dangerous one. We need to nip that because that is not in the future. At least I don't think in our lifetimes. I could be wrong, but believe me, that's a nasty conversation. If it's going on out there, we need to change that. And it's unfortunate, but we're going to have to adapt on some of these things. But ESGR is not going away. Don't think so.
No, and like I said, I think ESGR as it was may change and the direction may look different, but yeah, it'll be some model that'll be out there.
Yeah. Well, you look at how we changed during COVID. I mean, compared to when I first started 6 years ago, and I thought we were out of business when COVID hit, but I was wrong. It really transformed us. I'll use that. I know Judge Bogle likes that word, but it really has. And if you look at the numbers in North Dakota, we were able to do a lot more things just due to technology or just thinking differently. And those of us that have been in business or other organizations know that there's nothing the same way it was 6 years ago. Very little. And this probably won't look the same 6 years from now. But I think ESGR has a good future and a great mission. And if we stay just true to that mission, focus on that, try to stay as positive as we can. I mean, I'm the first one that doesn't like to see Jeanette's job, as valuable as she is to us. And believe me, the story, it may be written for now, but the story isn't written forever on the VST role. So just try to keep that in mind and stay positive, and let's have some fun out there. We'll get through it.
Thanks, Delton.
Sorry, I'll be quiet now, Sherry.
No, it's fine.
Not on my soapbox.
Any other comments, questions?
I just want to say, Robbie, thank you so much for doing that briefing. You always do such a great job and you're so connected, and thank you very much.